I wanted to talk about a few things, actually, more things than I usually do on these cell phones. I wanted to talk about Antarctica. I wanted to talk about the trouble on the base. I wanted to talk about the the trader that essentially was trying to give out information on our tanks. The active duty Army soldier that ended up attempting to share information. I also want to talk about this Avi Loeb situation briefly because it is absolutely nuts what they're actually saying. And then, of course, the forgotten story that, all of a sudden now they do believe that, the moon will be hit. I want to bring that up because now it has a lot of significance in what is going on. Just real quick, if you've missed the last couple weeks, if you don't know why I'm in a garage right now, I'm moving into a new house, which is much smaller, and it has taken me a long time to get moved in. I'm basically moving in by myself, done a lot of the moving on my own, besides the help of one day. So thank you guys for your patience. But that doesn't stop the world from spinning, right? So, or sliding or frisbeeing, whatever you want to call it. All right. By the way, thank you, Heaven Bound, and some of the other folks that are in already. So, first of all, the active duty Army soldier charged with attempting to share sensitive information about military tanks with Russia ended up sharing this information, and essentially, they make him out to basically say that he would do almost anything to turn on the U.S. at this point, and they say that he even was trying to give this information about our M1A2 tanks, and I think I messed up what kind of tank that was. No, M1A2 tanks, Abrams, and he was even giving hardware. He had hardware actually put into his storage. He was trying to give this information to the Russian Federation. I don't know if this is propaganda to essentially set us up for whatever is about to happen, but there's been a lot of stories about how, of course, Russia is, about to start, this huge offensive, that they're about to take over NATO in the next year and a half. Meanwhile, you have other people that are saying that they're trying to look for peace with the president. In fact, they talked about the essentially that Russia and Putin are looking to get a in-person meeting with Putin. They say that the only hope for this to come to peace from the Russian side is that if they talk to, President Trump and he'll be able to do something. They even say that President Trump is their hope because if they can get stuff rolling on a business aspect and money aspect, that might actually close some of the doors for this war, and end it, right? They also talk about how this war, some folks are saying that it's not about taking territory. It's more about, that they are trying to reach their goals and everything else. Well, at the same time, Russian and Chinese navies are practicing destroying enemy subs. This is right just a few days after Trump ended up saying that he ended up moving subs closer to Russia. If you guys didn't catch that over the last couple days, there's been a lot of distractions going on. And of course, now, Russia and China are closer than ever. In fact, they practice destroying enemy submarines. This is Russia and Chinese navies destroying enemy submarines. Days after Trump moved, the Russian and Chinese navies have practiced hunting and destroying an enemy submarine in the Sea of Japan. Russia's defense ministry said on Wednesday, days after the president had moved 2 U.S. nuclear subs closer to Russia. Where exactly, we never know because they're nuclear subs, right? Well, at the same time, I mentioned last night that I thought it was kind of odd that almost identical timing that we're all of a sudden seeing that blue whales are just going silent. I thought that was pretty interesting. Is that because there is an increased number of submarines that are rolling around? They use sonar. In fact, some nature conservists say that the sonar and the different things that our submarines use are actually dangerous or harmful to whales and different animals that use sonar. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And then again, they said, this is a direct quote, as a result of effective joint actions, the enemy submarine was promptly detected and mock destroyed, the defense ministry said. After practicing anti-submarine tasks, the crews of the Russian and Chinese ships thanked each other for the fruitful work. This is looked over by many people. People aren't going to really pay attention to this, but this is something that happens right before you end up seeing a real war. I think that myself and many others, nobody is excited to see a world war happen or any kind of major war from peer-to-peer adversaries, but that's what many of us are preparing for. Why? Because the signs have been there for an extremely long time. This is something I've talked about a million times. And then I want to briefly talk about this Antarctica thing. So what the heck is going on in Antarctica? So 3 people from a U.S. base in Antarctica supposedly were evacuated in a high-risk rescue operation. They said, quote, nothing short of heroic. 3 people needing medical care were evacuated from American research base in Antarctica, New Zealand's Air Force says, during a perilous rescue operation carried out in freezing temperatures and a 24-hour darkness. And they said that they actually had to fly the plane in. And this is a Hercules, right? The pilots are flying in with actual night vision goggles and landing on, get this, on a essentially in airway or a runway that was made by actually putting water and making and creating ice in this area. So they essentially said that this thing basically touched down and it kept its motors going so it wouldn't freeze, picked up these 3 officials and then took them off. Why were these people injured? The one was seriously injured. The other needed medical assistance. It definitely brings to my mind, movies like The Thing. It definitely brings to my mind all of the predictive programming talking about how, that ice is melting and that ancient viruses or something is coming out of them. Obviously our imaginations go wild when we hear stories like this because Antarctica is so mysterious. It's one of those things that, everybody debates on what is actually going on in these areas. 1 person requiring urgent medical care and 2 others needing medical assistance were flown out of McMurdo Station in a mission that took nearly 20 hours. It says the U.S. National Science Foundation, which operates the station, sent out the call for help because there were insufficient medical resources at the base, which makes sense. A crew on the Royal New Zealand Air Force C-130, this was a C-130 that did this supposedly, braved the harsh conditions and successfully carried out the midwinter medical evacuation. And it says that there's no information given about the patients or their conditions. They said that the base had to manually create a runway and ensure that the ice was groomed and suitable for landing in Antarctica's perpetual winter darkness and sub-zero temperatures after a detailed analysis of weather and conditions of the airfield. And this is the New Zealand rescue guys, I believe, right? So, I mean, this is something where if this was the U.S., I would think that, this could almost be used as one of those hurrah, like, we're the baddest alive. But this was the New Zealand Air Force crew. So these guys might have just actually been badasses. Sometimes they tell these stories, and especially times when we're looking at different countries or puffing their chests and doing elephant walks and parades and all of these things. You see these kind of stories and it definitely gets morale up and it really shows that. Well, as far as this goes, New Zealand Air Force apparently did one of these crazy missions. And then again, another thing about this. Okay. So next, I definitely want to hit this, and I'm going to go back to one here. So I actually just saw a video by Jacob's Ladder. If you guys are not familiar with Jacob's Ladder, aka Jacob Israel, he talked about something we've actually covered about for years now, since the first Oumuamua. If you guys aren't familiar with Oumuamua was the first interstellar comet that came in, or the interstellar object that came in from outside of our galaxy, right? And they even named it Scout. Well, Jacob just put a good actual video together and took the video of Avi Loeb talking about this new object, the Atlas. Strangely enough, the Atlas name and everything about it, about everything about these interstellar objects has been super weird, including the perihelion, the way that it's coming in and that it's possibly going to go behind the sun. In that clip, Avi Loeb actually talks about how if this was a hostile craft or an alien craft, coming after the Scout, that we wouldn't even have time to blast this thing. It's very, very crazy that in this day and age now, things like that seem more believable than what the mainstream media is actually telling us, right? There's a lot of really odd things that have lined up over the years, and especially when they've talked about meteors and asteroids. And I know that everybody is not on the same page when it comes to this. But you have to understand, you have all of the rich and elites essentially making these bunkers. Just yesterday or the day before, we heard about Sam Altman on a podcast essentially saying that he is building bunkers as well. You've got Jeff Zuckerberg doing his $270 million bunker in Hawaii, flying in, livestock and all sorts of other things. And then, of course, Gates and all of the rest, they have bunkers in almost every one of their properties. So what are they preparing for? And these are the richest of the rich. Are they doing it just to be able to be like, hey, do you want to see my bunker? I've got a bowling alley in it. Or are they doing it because they know that something is down the road and they will be able to comfortably live through that? And when it comes and, settles, they're going to be even more powerful. The thing is if you think about this from the uber rich, and I mean the uber rich, not the I wore a $12,000 dress to Congress rich. We're talking about the uber rich where they could buy a city, where they own cities, where they most likely, buy a skyscraper for their wife as a, anniversary gift. That kind of rich. So that kind of rich, you have to understand, these guys are on a whole different level. They don't think like us. They're not like us. They are most definitely, not on the same page. When you see those people building these things and setting up in ways we've never even seen before to survive things that we don't even acknowledge right now, that's creepy to me. And that's something that I think that people really got to pay attention to, especially right now, given that we've already had these worldwide disasters that most believe were even pushed on us or that were not exactly what they told us, right? So when you have disasters where most people think that they were worldwide coordinated, you think, what else could happen, right? Well, now you've got potential aliens coming, and that's been talked about for over a decade. Beams colored blue. You have, of course, an asteroid that's potentially going to hit the moon. I talked about this years ago. YouTube shut down, and everybody talked about a military gentleman that came on a live stream, essentially talked about how the comet's not going to hit the Earth. I'm really worried about this thing hitting the moon. If it hits the moon, knocks the moon out of alignment or blows up the moon, whatever it is, then essentially the whole world will suffer because of it. If you don't believe me, you can go through YouTube. You can go back, Drama Alert and all these other channels covered this. It was just such a wild time on YouTube. And it was one of the first times that almost everywhere across the planet, YouTube shut down. Some people thought it was because they were wiping that video from the internet. Now, at that time, we never saw that. But after a certain event that happened in New Zealand, they actually did it, and they did it publicly. They essentially shut down any kind of upload of a certain video. They got rid of it. They wiped it, and they even had to essentially stop uploads. And maybe by then, they had perfected a way to where if they didn't want a video on their platform, they could do that, right? Now, that's just a theory. That's just an opinion, or not even an opinion, just a theory, I guess. But when this moon event happened, it was very strange because it essentially said that, hey, we're not the ones that are going to be hit by this future asteroid. This is not what the elites are preparing for. It's because something is possibly going to hit the moon, and they got a heads up about it a long time ago. And now we see this object come into space, and not the interstellar one, another one. And essentially, over a few days, they changed the percentages of the odds it was going to hit Earth. It was like 1.9, and then 2.1, and then 2.5, and 2.6, 3.1. And it ended up like ending at like 1 out of 35, hitting. And then they said, no, oh, just kidding. We followed it, and it's actually less than that. Then they come back out and say, oh, actually, they think it might even hit the moon. Now we move forward. We have this interstellar object that's coming in, doing this weird thing where it's possibly hiding behind the sun, and then it's going to come towards us. And now you have Harvard professors essentially saying that we have aliens, that are possibly coming our way, and that they're even possibly hostile, right? If this isn't something that's just completely real and there's aliens, well, that's a setup for something else, right? And if you don't think that this is in the bag for 2026 or 2025, then I would say, what was in the bag for 2019? What was in the bag for 2020, 21, 22, 23? Did we expect any of the stuff to happen that we did? And it seems like they can't really go back down from this level. They've got to go up. So I would like to hear your opinions on some of the stuff that's going on in the space world and everything else. Now, there's been a ton of different events that have been going on over the last week, especially with Russia and Donald, and they're hyping it up. I sure hope that we can get to some sort of situation where nobody's going to war. But under my personal belief that this is all kind of the back and forth that happens to get people kind of used to the fact that this is about to happen. It's not the end of the world, in my opinion. It's the beginning of a new one, and we're going to physically fight a couple of these countries. It is a war. It is something that the United States, 93% of the time that we have been in the United States, that we've been a country, 93% of that time has been at war. So if you think that we're going to go another 10 years without war, then I think you might be smoking something. So again, I definitely think that, everybody should have a lot of different, avenues for prep, and people should be doing this over a long time, not be last minute, trying to get things together. Get a little bit at a time. If you do it right, you can do it affordably. You don't have to be a millionaire. You don't have to have livestock flown into Hawaii to do it. So again, there's just so many crazy things. Now, the whole thing with Russia and the president, I will follow this and I'll make sure to update you. Again, we will have normal shows once I end up getting internet where I am. So again, that will be continuing most likely Monday. Sunday, we are getting cable. So thank you guys for being patient. A couple of people here, thank you for the support, early morning support. Brasilia Mia. Thank you so much for the massive support. Thank you for supporting independent. I appreciate that. And I don't even think you said anything. Thanks for all you do. Glad to catch you live. Well, hey, thank you so much. And then let's see here. We've got Trina Roque. Hey, old school. Hey, thank you so much. And you're on your 6-month badge. Glad to see you. Thanks for all you do. FY Roque sounds like rock. Okay, so I've been saying it wrong the entire time. Trina Rock. All right, well, thank you, Trina, and I appreciate you. And thank you, everybody that has been patient through all of this craziness. And I'm trying to make sure I usually always miss at least one thing here. So let me make sure. And then, and before we get to this last piece, again, I do want to remind you guys, make sure to go over and check out prep items. Again, EMP shield is an easy way to protect yourself against an EMP. If we do end up having an EMP and it knocks down everything, it would be very, very much a smart move to have one on your car, truck, motorcycle, boat, your generators, pretty much anything else that you want to protect. You have to have an EMP shield on. And then again, make sure to go over to the website. You can see tons of different stuff that we recommend as far as items. All of the items that we recommend, including, marfooglenews.com/EMP, marfooglenews.com/prep. Any of those things, these are all items that we've had for years. We don't rotate because some third party is telling us what to put on there. They're all items that we believe will actually save your life or make it easier in a disaster. So I really thank all of you that have supported us through a lot of these hard times and things like this, where, you know, this is the longest we've gone without shows. And we appreciate not only you helping us, but also sharing our channel out. So again, thank you, thank you, and thank you. And then make sure to go check that video out over on Jacob's Ladder, because it's absolutely nuts to hear him talk about it, because you're hearing this Harvard professor talk about this absolutely crazy thing. And then as far as the China, I do want to make a comment about China. China has been moving further and past some of the lines they've never really crossed. I mean, they've never crossed defense lines. They're now supposedly going to have 6 carriers by 2030. If they're saying they're going to have 6 carriers by 2030, I believe they will have 6 carriers by 2027 or 2028. And that has been a pattern that I've followed since 2017. That China has said that they will have this many by this date, and they end up having a ton more by this date. So if you go back and look at some of the headlines that have happened as far as when they thought they would have the biggest Navy, when they thought they would have the biggest Air Force, which is still in the works, they are building like crazy. They are investing in gold. We just had another spurge in gold, another spike. So people need to really watch the financial market, watch Wall Street, because Wall Street knows. When we saw that huge spike in May of everybody buying up gold futures, silver, and pretty much every other precious metal, that's something that you should pay attention to, because, this isn't the end of the world. This is going to be a turning. This is going to be a turning. We are in a turning. So prepare for it and you'll be fine. If you don't prepare for it, well, that's up to you to do. All right, you guys, and thank you so much. And I believe somebody else got in there last minute. I will make sure to get to you next show. Thank you guys, and I appreciate everybody that ended up coming today. Much love. Be safe. Be prepared. And Marf out. I should have an update out later tonight on some of the stuff that's going on today. So make sure to turn notifications on. Also turn notifications on to Marfoogle News over, again, our sister channel. Thank you guys. Be safe. Be prepared. And Marf out.